In the last episode of a tumultuous era, humanity teetered on the brink of collapse, ravaged by environmental disasters and societal upheaval. Amidst the ruins, a figure emerged, a visionary entrepreneur who would change the course of history. His name was whispered in awe by those who dared to dream of a better tomorrow. As the darkness receded, a lone figure stood atop a weathered skyscraper, gazing out upon the ravaged landscape. The wind howled through the skeletal remains of a once great city, and Ambrose Wynter felt the weight of the world bearing down upon him. He breathed deeply, the crisp air filling his lungs as he surveyed the desolate terrain. The scars of a bygone era lay before him, a testament to the destruction that had threatened to consume all. Ambrose turned, his eyes locking onto the makeshift settlement that had become his home. The hum of activity filled the air as humans and alien species worked together, driven by a shared vision of a brighter future. "We are rebuilding," he thought, a sense of pride swelling within him. A gentle chime pierced the air, and Ambrose's gaze fell upon the sleek silver comms device on his wrist. He raised it, and a holographic display flickered to life, casting a soft glow across his face. "Ambrose Wynter," a voice said, laced with a hint of urgency. "We have a situation." Ambrose's eyes narrowed, his mind racing with the possibilities. "What is it, Elian?" "Reports are coming in of a rogue trading vessel, operating on the fringes of the Orion Nebula. Intelligence suggests it's being backed by one of our associates." Ambrose's expression darkened, his thoughts turning to the complex web of alliances and rivalries that had come to define the galaxy. "Ill handle it," he said, his voice firm. The comms device fell silent, and Ambrose's gaze drifted back to the settlement below. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and he was determined to ensure its survival. As he descended into the fray, Ambrose couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that unseen forces were waiting for him to make his next move. The air was thick with tension, the silence between the stars a palpable presence that seemed to press in around him. He pushed through the crowds, exchanging nods with the humans and aliens who worked tirelessly to rebuild. The atmosphere was alive with the hum of machinery, the scent of welding and ozone hanging heavy over the makeshift workshops. Ambrose paused, his eyes locking onto a group of figures huddled around a holographic display. They were deep in discussion, their faces a map of concern and determination. "What's the status on the Zeridian engines?" he asked, his presence commanding attention. "They're online, Ambrose," one of the technicians replied, a look of relief crossing his face. "We're just debugging the stabilizers now." Ambrose nodded, his mind racing with the implications. The Zeridian engines were a crucial component in humanity's bid to reclaim its place among the stars. With them online, the possibilities were endless. As he continued through the settlement, Ambrose was struck by the sense of community that had developed. Humans and aliens worked side by side, driven by a shared vision of a brighter future. But amidst the hope, a spark of unease flickered within him. The galaxy was a treacherous place, and the alliances he had forged were fragile at best. A figure emerged from the shadows, their features illuminated by the soft glow of a nearby workstation. It was Elian, his trusted advisor, and a look of concern etched on his face. "Ambrose, we need to talk." Ambrose's instincts prickled, his senses on high alert. "What is it, Elian?" "The whispers are growing louder," Elian said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Rumors of a traitor within our midst." Ambrose's expression darkened, his thoughts turning to the complex web of alliances and rivalries that had come to define the galaxy. "Well, investigate," he said, his voice firm. As the night wore on, Ambrose found himself increasingly drawn into the shadows, driven by a growing sense of unease. The whispers of a traitor were a stark reminder of the dangers that lurked in the darkness, waiting to strike. And then, without warning, the darkness was illuminated by a flash of light, a distant explosion casting a fiery glow across the horizon. Ambrose's heart quickened, his senses on high alert. The settlement was under attack, and he knew that he had to act. The battle for humanity's future had begun, and Ambrose Wynter stood ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The sound of alarms pierced the air, a cacophony of warning sirens and shouts erupting from the settlement below. Ambrose's instincts kicked in, his mind racing with the possibilities. He sprinted towards the source of the explosion, his heart pounding in his chest. Elian appeared at his side, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Reports are coming in of a hostile force moving in on our position," he said, his voice laced with urgency. "We're reading multiple ships, Ambrose. They're heavily armed." Ambrose's mind raced with the implications. The settlement was vulnerable, its defenses still in the process of being built. He knew that he had to act fast, to rally his forces and prepare for battle. As he rounded a corner, Ambrose was greeted by the sight of chaos. Aliens and humans scrambled to respond, their faces etched with fear and determination. Ambrose's eyes locked onto a figure, a towering Theran warrior standing tall amidst the chaos. "Kale," he shouted, his voice carrying above the din. "What's the situation?" The Theran warrior turned, his eyes flashing with a fierce determination. "We're being attacked by a rogue faction, Ambrose. They're demanding our surrender." Ambrose's expression darkened, his thoughts turning to the complex web of alliances and rivalries that had come to define the galaxy. He knew that he had to act fast to protect the settlement and its inhabitants. "Assemble our forces," he ordered, his voice firm. "We'll defend our home, no matter the cost." The battle for humanity's future had begun, and Ambrose Wynter stood ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The air was thick with tension as Ambrose surveyed the settlement's defenses, his eyes scanning the makeshift barriers and trenches that had been hastily erected. The sound of blaster fire and explosions echoed through the air, growing louder by the second. Elian appeared at his side, his face set in a grim expression. "We're reading multiple factions, Ambrose. The Zorvath, the Kralian, and the Vraxes are all moving in on our position." Ambrose's mind raced with the implications. The Zorvath were notorious for their brutal tactics, while the Kralian were masters of psychological warfare. The Vraxes, on the other hand, were known for their cunning and stealth. Together, they posed a formidable threat. "We need to hold our ground," Ambrose shouted above the din. "We can't let them break through our defenses." Kale, the Theran warrior, nodded in agreement. "My people are ready to fight, Ambrose. Well, hold the line." As if on cue, a wave of attackers surged forward, their ships descending from the skies like deadly birds of prey. Ambrose's forces responded in kind, unleashing a hail of blaster fire that illuminated the darkening sky. The battle raged on, the two sides trading blows in a frenzy of chaos and destruction. Ambrose moved through the chaos, his eyes locked on the horizon as he directed his forces with precision and skill. But despite their valiant efforts, the settlement's defenses were beginning to falter. The attackers were too numerous, too well-equipped, and too relentless. "We're being overwhelmed," Elian shouted, his voice laced with desperation. Ambrose's eyes narrowed, his mind racing with options. He knew that he had to think outside the box, to find a way to turn the tide of battle in their favor. That's when he saw it, a glimmer of hope in the midst of chaos. A group of rogue ships, flying under the banner of the notorious pirate lord, Arcturus Blackwood. Blackwood's ships were feared throughout the galaxy, their crews known for their ruthlessness and cunning. But Ambrose knew that the pirate lord had a soft spot for humanity, and that he might be willing to lend a hand. "Elian," Ambrose shouted, his eyes locked on the pirate ships. "Get me Blackwood on the comms. Now." The sound of blaster fire grew louder, the battle raging on as Ambrose waited with bated breath for Blackwood's response. Would the pirate lord come to their aid, or would he turn a blind eye to their plight? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain, the fate of humanity hung in the balance, and Ambrose Wynter would stop at nothing to ensure their survival. Elian's fingers flew across the comms console, his eyes darting between the screens as he tried to establish a connection with Blackwood's ship. The sound of blaster fire and explosions grew louder, the battle raging on as the seconds ticked by. Suddenly, the comms console beeped, and Elian's face lit up with a mixture of hope and relief. "I've got him, Ambrose. Blackwood's on the line." Ambrose grabbed the comms device, his heart racing with anticipation. "Blackwood, this is Ambrose Wynter. I need your help." The pirate lord's voice was like a growl, a low, menacing tone that sent a shiver down Ambrose's spine. "Ambrose Wynter, the man who's been making waves throughout the galaxy. What makes you think I'd be willing to help you?" Ambrose took a deep breath, his mind racing with the implications. "Because, Blackwood, I know that humanity is on the brink of extinction, and I know that you have a soft spot for us." There was a pause, and for a moment Ambrose wondered if he had misjudged the pirate lord. But then Blackwood's voice came back online, a hint of amusement lacing his tone. "You know, Ambrose, I think I might just take a liking to you. I'll send my ships to aid you, but don't think this is a favor. This is a business deal. I expect repayment in full when the time comes." Ambrose didn't hesitate. He knew that he had to take the deal no matter the cost. "Agreed, Blackwood, I'll owe you one." The pirate lord's laughter sent a shiver down Ambrose's spine. "I'll collect, Ambrose, mark my words." The comms console went dark and Ambrose turned to Elian. "Get the word out, Elian. Blackwood's ships are on their way." Elian nodded, his eyes flashing with hope. "We might just make it out of this alive, Ambrose." Ambrose's gaze swept the horizon, his eyes locking onto the approaching ships. They were a motley crew, a mix of salvaged vessels and stolen spacecraft, but they flew under the banner of the pirate lord, and that was all that mattered. As Blackwood's ships descended into the fray, the battle turned. The attackers faltered, their ships scattering as the pirates unleashed a hail of blaster fire that sent them reeling. Ambrose's forces rallied, their spirits lifted by the sudden turn of events. They fought with renewed vigor, pushing the attackers back with a ferocity that bordered on desperation. But Ambrose knew that the battle was far from won. The attackers might have been pushed back, but they would regroup and they would return. And next time they would come with a vengeance. As the last of the attackers fled, Ambrose turned to Elian. "We need to regroup, Elian. We need to reassess our defenses and prepare for the next attack." Elian nodded, his face set in a determined expression. "I'll get the settlement's leaders assembled, Ambrose. We'll get to work on fortifying our defenses." Ambrose nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. But as he turned to leave, he caught a glimpse of something that made his heart skip a beat. A ship, flying solo, hovering at the edge of the battlefield. It was a ship like no other, its hull a deep, iridescent blue, its engines pulsing with an otherworldly energy. And on its side, a symbol etched in bold, silver letters, the Aurora Initiative. Ambrose's mind raced with the implications. The Aurora Initiative was a myth, a legend of a secret organization that had been thought to be long extinct. But here they were, flying solo, their ship a beacon of mystery and intrigue. Ambrose's instincts told him to be wary, to approach with caution. But his curiosity got the better of him. He turned to Elian, his voice low and urgent. "Elian, get a team together. We need to make contact with that ship." Elian's eyes narrowed, his face set in a puzzled expression. "Are you sure, Ambrose? We don't know what kind of technology they're packing." Ambrose's eyes locked onto the ship, his heart racing with anticipation. "I am sure, Elian. This could be the break we need. This could be the key to our survival." As Elian nodded and turned to assemble a team, Ambrose couldn't shake off the feeling that he was walking into a trap. But he had to take the chance. He had to know what the Aurora Initiative wanted. And so, with a sense of trepidation, Ambrose Wynter set out to make contact with the mysterious ship and to unravel the secrets that lay beyond. Elian assembled a team of 6, hand-picking the best of the best from the settlement's defenses. Ambrose watched as they geared up, their faces set with determination. "All right, here's the plan," Elian briefed them. "We approach the ship with caution. We don't know what kind of tech they're packing or what their intentions are. Stay sharp, stay alert." The team nodded, their eyes locked onto the mysterious ship. Ambrose felt a shiver run down his spine as he gazed at the symbol etched onto the hull, the Aurora Initiative. What did they want? As they approached the ship, Ambrose could feel the air charged with an otherworldly energy. The ship's engines pulsed with a power that seemed to vibrate through every molecule of air. He could feel it like a humming in his bones. The team fanned out, surrounding the ship in a semicircle. Ambrose took a deep breath, stepping forward. "Hail them, Elian." Elian nodded, working the comms console. "Aurora Initiative, this is Ambrose Wynter. We come in peace." There was a pause, and Ambrose wondered if they'd made a mistake. But then a voice responded like a gentle breeze on a summer's day. "Ambrose Wynter, we've been expecting you. We have proposals for the future of humanity." Ambrose's instincts told him to be wary, but his curiosity got the better of him. "I am listening." The voice continued, "Well, send a representative to discuss the details. But be warned, Ambrose Wynter, the fate of humanity hangs in the balance. Make the wrong choice and the consequences will be catastrophic." The comms console beeped, and a hatch on the ship slid open. A figure emerged, dressed in a flowing white robe, their features obscured by a hood. Ambrose's team tensed, their hands on their blasters, but Ambrose held up a hand, staying them. "Let's hear them out." The figure approached, its movements fluid, almost ethereal. As they drew closer, Ambrose saw that it was a woman, her features ageless, her eyes like pools of deep water. "I am Arya," she said, her voice like a gentle melody, "and I come bearing gifts and warnings." Ambrose's instincts told him to trust her, but his mind warned him of the dangers of blind trust. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the unknown. "Speak, Arya," he said. "I am listening." Arya's eyes locked onto his, and Ambrose felt like he was drowning in their depths. "The Galactic Council," she said, her voice like a whispered secret. "They're not what they seem. They're hiding secrets, secrets that could change the course of history." Ambrose's mind raced with the implications. What secrets could the Council be hiding? And what did Arya's organization want in return for their help? As Arya began to speak, her words spinning a web of intrigue and deception, Ambrose knew that he was walking a tightrope, balancing the fate of humanity on the edge of a knife. But he had to take the chance. He had to know what secrets the Aurora Initiative held and what they wanted in return. And so, with a deep breath, Ambrose Wynter stepped forward into the unknown. Arya's words dripped with an air of mystery, her tone hinting at secrets that could topple empires. Ambrose's team watched intently, their faces etched with concern as Arya continued to weave her web of intrigue. "The Council's power is built on lies and deception," she said, her eyes flashing with determination. "They've manipulated events from behind the scenes, using their influence to control the flow of resources and information." Ambrose's mind raced with the implications. If Arya's claims were true, it would mean that every decision he made, every alliance he forged, was built on shaky ground. The Council's machinations could have far-reaching consequences, threatening the very foundations of humanity's resurgence. "What proof do you have?" Elian asked, her voice laced with skepticism. Arya's smile was a gentle, enigmatic thing. "We've gathered evidence, Ambrose, evidence that will shake the foundations of the galaxy, but we need your help to uncover the truth." Ambrose felt a thrill of excitement mixed with trepidation. He knew that getting entangled in the Aurora Initiative's web could be dangerous, but his curiosity was piqued. What secrets did they hold, and what did they want in return for their help? "What do you want from us?" he asked, his voice cautious. Arya's eyes locked onto his, her gaze piercing. "We want your influence, Ambrose. Your reputation as a leader, your connections with the alien species. Together, we can expose the Council's secrets and forge a new path for humanity." The air was thick with tension as Ambrose weighed his options. He knew that trusting Arya and the Aurora Initiative could be a mistake, but he also knew that he couldn't ignore the possibility of uncovering the Council's secrets. As he hesitated, Arya's eyes seemed to bore into his soul, as if she could see the doubts racing through his mind. And then, in a movement that was almost imperceptible, she reached out and placed a hand on his arm. "Trust me, Ambrose," she whispered. "Together, we can change the course of history." Ambrose felt a shiver run down his spine as he met Arya's gaze. He knew that he was taking a risk, but he also knew that he had to take the chance. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and he was the only one who could tip the scales. With a deep breath, Ambrose Wynter made his decision. "I am in," he said, his voice firm. "Let's uncover the Council's secrets and forge a new path for humanity." Arya's smile was like a sunrise, illuminating the dark landscape of the galaxy. "Then let us begin," she said, her eyes sparkling with determination. As the two of them shook hands, Ambrose felt the weight of the galaxy shift ever so slightly. He knew that he was walking a tightrope, balancing the fate of humanity on the edge of a knife. But he also knew that he had to take the chance. For in the world of politics and power, sometimes the only way to change the course of history was to take a leap of faith. The room fell silent, the only sound the soft hum of the Aurora Initiative's advanced technology. Ambrose's team watched with bated breath as Arya's eyes locked onto his, her gaze a mixture of determination and warning. As the two of them shook hands, a spark of electricity seemed to crackle through the air. It was a moment of mutual understanding, a silent agreement to embark on a perilous journey together. "I'll need access to your databases," Ambrose, Arya said, her voice crisp and efficient. "The Council's secrets are hidden behind layers of encryption, but with your influence, I can bypass their security protocols." Ambrose nodded, his mind racing with the implications. He knew that granting Arya access to his databases would be a risk, but he also knew that it was a necessary step in uncovering the Council's secrets. As Arya began to work her magic, the room fell into a flurry of activity. Elian and Aaron worked together, hacking into the Council's mainframe, while Riker and Kale stood guard, their eyes scanning the perimeter for any signs of danger. Ambrose watched, his eyes fixed on Arya as she worked with a speed and precision that was almost inhuman. He knew that she was a master of her craft, a hacker without equal, and he was grateful to have her on his side. It wasn't long before Arya let out a triumphant cry, her eyes flashing with excitement. "I've got it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've accessed the Council's central database." Ambrose felt a thrill of excitement mixed with trepidation. He knew that they were about to uncover secrets that could change the course of history, but he also knew that they were taking a huge risk. "What did you find?" he asked, his voice low and urgent. Arya's smile was a mixture of triumph and concern. "The Council's been hiding something big, Ambrose, something that could topple empires." As she spoke, the room fell silent once more, the only sound the soft hum of the Aurora Initiative's technology. Ambrose felt a sense of foreboding, a feeling that they were about to uncover secrets that would change the course of human history forever. "What is it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Arya's eyes locked onto his, her gaze piercing. "The Council's been hiding an ancient technology," she said, her voice low and urgent. "A technology that could give humanity the power to shape the galaxy." Ambrose felt a shiver run down his spine as Arya's words hung in the air. He knew that they were about to embark on a journey that would take them to the very edge of the galaxy, and beyond. The room seemed to hold its breath as Arya's words hung in the air, the weight of their implications settling heavy on the team's shoulders. "Ancient technology," Elian whispered, his eyes wide with wonder. "You mean from the architects?" Arya nodded, her gaze never leaving Ambrose's. "That's right. The Council's been hiding evidence of an ancient alien civilization, one that possessed technology beyond our wildest dreams." Riker stepped forward, his hand on the hilt of his sword. "What kind of technology are we talking about?" Arya's smile was grim. "The kind that could give humanity the power to reshape the galaxy in our image. The kind that could make us gods." Kale's eyes narrowed. "And you're sure the Council's hiding this?" Arya's nod was decisive. "I am positive. The encryption was layers deep, but I managed to crack it." The Council's been hiding this technology for centuries, using it to maintain their grip on power. Ambrose felt a cold anger rising within him. He had always known the Council was corrupt, but this was on a whole new level. "What's the Council's plan?" he asked, his voice low and deadly. Arya's eyes flashed with determination. "From what I gathered, they're planning to use this technology to cement their control over the galaxy. They're going to use it to crush any opposition, to enslave entire species and civilizations." Aaron's voice was barely above a whisper. "We can't let them do it, Ambrose." Ambrose's jaw clenched, a fierce determination burning within him. "We won't let them do it. We'll take this technology from them, and we'll use it to bring them down." The room erupted into a flurry of activity as the team began to make plans, their minds racing with the implications of Arya's discovery. Ambrose stood tall, his eyes fixed on the horizon, his heart burning with a fierce determination to bring the Council to its knees. As they worked, the silence was broken only by the soft hum of the Aurora Initiative's technology, and the heavy breathing of the team as they prepared to take on the Council in the most epic struggle humanity had ever known. Hours turned into days as the team worked tirelessly, poring over Arya's discovery and planning their next move. They knew that time was of the essence, that the Council would stop at nothing to keep their secrets buried. It was on the third day, as the team was finalizing their plans, that the alarms went off. The room fell silent as the sound of sirens pierced the air, and the screens flickered to life, displaying a message in bold red letters. "Warning, unidentified spacecraft approaching Aurora Initiative headquarters. Warning, unidentified spacecraft." Riker's sword was out of its sheath in an instant, his eyes locked on Ambrose. "It's the Council. They've found us." Ambrose's eyes narrowed, his heart racing with anticipation. "Let them come. We're ready for them." As the team readied for battle, Ambrose stood tall, his eyes fixed on the horizon, his heart burning with a fierce determination to take down the Council and to shape the galaxy in humanity's image. The air was electric with tension as the team prepared to face the Council's forces, their hearts pounding in unison with the sirens. Ambrose's eyes scanned the room, his gaze locking onto each member of his team, assessing their readiness for the battle ahead. Elian's eyes shone with a mix of excitement and fear, his hands trembling slightly as he gripped his rifle. Aaron's face was set in a determined mask, her eyes blazing with a fierce intensity. Kale's jaw was clenched, his eyes fixed on the screens displaying the approaching spacecraft. Riker's sword gleamed in the dim light, his eyes locked on Ambrose, ready to defend him at all costs. Arya's fingers flew across her console, her eyes darting between the screens and the team. "I am hacking into the Council's systems, trying to get a lock on their fleet's strength and deployment." Ambrose nodded, his mind racing with strategies and contingency plans. "How long until they're within range?" Arya's fingers danced across her console, her brow furrowed in concentration. 5 minutes, maybe less. We need to move now." The team erupted into a flurry of activity, rushing to their assigned stations as the sirens grew louder, the screens flashing brighter with each passing second. Ambrose stood tall, his eyes fixed on the horizon, his heart pounding with anticipation. As the Council's forces emerged from the veil of space, the team fell silent, their eyes locked on the screens displaying the enemy's fleet. The room seemed to hold its breath as the two forces faced off, the fate of humanity hanging in the balance. And then, all hell broke loose. Lasers blazed, missiles screamed through the void, and the sound of explosions rocked the Aurora Initiative's headquarters. Ambrose's team fought with everything they had, their training and determination pitted against the Council's superior numbers and firepower. Ambrose stood tall, his eyes locked on the battle raging around him, his heart burning with a fierce determination to protect his team, to protect humanity's future. The outcome was far from certain, but one thing was clear: only one side would emerge victorious. As the battle raged on, Ambrose's eyes locked onto a specific ship, its designation flashing on the screens. Counselor Ilara's personal flagship. A cold smile spread across his face, a plan forming in his mind. "Riker, can you take out their flagship?" he asked, his voice low and deadly. Riker's eyes locked onto the ship, his sword gleaming with anticipation. "I'll take care of it, Ambrose." You get ready to take the council down. The battle raged on, the outcome hanging precariously in the balance. But Ambrose knew one thing for certain. He would stop at nothing to bring the council to its knees, to reshape the galaxy in humanity's image. And as the fate of humanity hung in the balance, Ambrose stood tall, his eyes fixed on the horizon, his heart burning with a fierce determination to change the course of history. The air was electric with tension as Riker sprinted towards the hangar, his sword at the ready. Ambrose's eyes followed him, his mind racing with the consequences of this bold move. Taking out Counselor Ilara's flagship would be a game changer, but it would also attract unwanted attention from the Council's forces. "Arya, can you hack into the flagship systems?" Ambrose called out, his voice rising above the din of battle. Arya's fingers flew across her console, her eyes darting between the screens. "I'm trying, Ambrose, but their security is tighter than a drum. I need more time." "Time is one thing we don't have," Ambrose muttered, his eyes locked onto the screens displaying the battle raging outside. Elian's voice cut through the noise, his rifle firing in short, controlled bursts. "We need to hold our ground, Ambrose. We can't let them break through our defenses." Ambrose nodded, his mind racing with strategies. "Aaron, can you get our shields online? We need to buy Arya more time." Aaron's face was set in a determined mask, her eyes blazing with intensity. "I am trying, Ambrose, but our power grid is taking a hit. We're running on backup systems." The screens flickered, the lights in the room dimming as the power grid struggled to keep up with the demands of the battle. Suddenly, Riker's voice echoed through the comms system. "I am in position, Ambrose. Get ready to take out their flagship." Ambrose's eyes locked onto the screens, his heart pounding with anticipation. This was it, the turning point in the battle. "Riker, go!" Ambrose yelled, his voice echoing through the room. The sound of laser fire ripped through the air, the screens flashing bright as Riker took out Counselor Ilara's flagship. The Council's forces faltered, their coordination disrupted by the loss of their leader. Ambrose's team erupted into cheers, their spirits lifted by this small victory. But Ambrose knew better, this was just the beginning. "Keep your guard up, team," he warned, his eyes locked onto the screens. "The Council won't take this lying down. They'll respond with everything they've got." As if on cue, the screens flared bright, the Council's forces regrouping and launching a counterattack. The battle raged on, the outcome hanging precariously in the balance. But Ambrose knew one thing for certain: he would stop at nothing to bring the Council to its knees, to reshape the galaxy in humanity's image. And as the fate of humanity hung in the balance, Ambrose stood tall, his eyes fixed on the horizon, his heart burning with a fierce determination to change the course of history. The air was thick with the acrid smell of smoke and ozone as Ambrose's team fought to hold their ground against the Council's renewed attack. Laser fire crisscrossed the space above, casting an otherworldly glow over the battle-scarred terrain. "Ambrose, we're taking heavy damage," Aaron cried out, her face illuminated by the flickering screens. "Hold on, Aaron, I've got an idea," Ambrose replied, his eyes darting between the screens as he rapidly assessed the situation. Elian's rifle fired in short, controlled bursts, his movements fluid and precise as he picked off Council soldiers. "We need to push back, Ambrose. We can't let them pin us down." Ambrose nodded, his mind racing with strategies. "Arya, can you hack into the Council's comms? We need to disrupt their coordination." Arya's fingers flew across her console, her eyes locked onto the screens. "I am trying, Ambrose, but their encryption is getting stronger by the minute." Suddenly, Riker's voice cut through the comms system, his words laced with urgency. "Ambrose, I've got a visual on their command center. If we take it out, we can cripple their operations." Ambrose's eyes snapped onto the screens, his heart pounding with anticipation. This was it, the chance to turn the tide of the battle. "Riker, go!" Ambrose yelled, his voice echoing through the room. The sound of laser fire ripped through the air, the screens flashing bright as Riker took out the command center. The Council's forces faltered, their coordination disrupted by the loss of their central hub. Ambrose's team erupted into cheers, their spirits lifted by this critical blow. But Ambrose knew better, the Council would not go quietly into the night. As if on cue, a figure emerged from the smoke-filled darkness, Counselor Ilara's cold, calculating gaze fixed on Ambrose. "You may have won this battle," she spat, her voice dripping with venom, "but the war is far from over. Humanity will burn for this insolence." Ambrose's eyes locked onto hers, his heart burning with a fierce determination. "Well, see about that," he growled, his hand on the hilt of his sword. The air was electric with tension as the two enemies faced off, the fate of humanity hanging precariously in the balance. The outcome was far from certain, but one thing was clear: only one of them would walk away from this battle alive. The silence between Ambrose and Ilara was palpable, the air thick with unspoken threats. The surrounding battle raged on, yet it seemed to fade into the background as the two leaders locked eyes. Ambrose's team watched in rapt attention, their breaths held in anticipation of the impending clash. Elian's rifle hung steady, his finger hovering over the trigger, ready to intervene at a moment's notice. Arya's eyes darted between the screens, her fingers still flying across the console as she continued to disrupt the Council's comms. Riker's voice remained silent, his focus fixed on providing cover fire from his vantage point. Counselor Ilara took a step forward, her heels clicking on the scarred terrain. Her eyes never wavered from Ambrose's, her gaze piercing through the smoke-filled air. "You're a fool, Ambrose Wynter," she hissed, her words laced with contempt. "You think you can defy the Galactic Council and emerge victorious. You're nothing but a fleeting anomaly, a momentary setback in the grand scheme of things." Ambrose's grip on his sword tightened, his knuckles white with restrained anger. He took a step forward, his eyes blazing with a fierce determination. "I've defied the odds before, Ilara," he growled, his voice low and menacing, "and I'll do it again. Humanity will not be crushed beneath your heel, not while I breathe." The Counselor's smile was a cold, calculating thing. "We'll see about that, Ambrose. You may have won this battle, but the war is far from over. And when the dust settles, you'll be nothing but a footnote in the annals of history." With a flick of her wrist, a squad of Council soldiers emerged from the smoke-filled darkness, their rifles trained on Ambrose's team. The air was thick with the promise of violence, the outcome hanging precariously in the balance. Ambrose's team readied themselves for battle, their movements fluid and practiced. Elian's rifle snapped into position, Arya's fingers flew across the console, and Riker's voice crackled through the comm system, his words laced with urgency. The fight was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The sound of laser fire ripped through the air, the screens flashing bright as the battle raged on. Ambrose's sword flashed in the fading light, his movements fluid and deadly as he carved a path through the Council's forces. But even as they fought, Ambrose knew that this was only the beginning. The Council would not rest until humanity was crushed beneath their heel, and Ambrose would not rest until humanity stood triumphant, free from the shackles of oppression. The fate of humanity hung precariously in the balance, the outcome far from certain. But one thing was clear: only one side would emerge victorious, and Ambrose would stop at nothing to ensure that humanity stood tall, proud, and free.